So this is something of a milestone here because it's the first review I've done based on a request, because I get requests for some reason. So here's a requested review. Let's hope it turns out okay. WWF Road to WrestleMania was the first WWF video game to grace the Game Boy Advance, having been released in November 2001. At first glance, Road to WrestleMania looks like a packed little package, about 24 WWF superstars to fiddle around with, multiple arenas to compete in, a decent number of game modes and match types that you could customize with a number of rules, little makeshift entrance themes and videos for each superstar, and the gameplay looks to be an updated version of the gameplay featured in WrestleMania 2000 for the Game Boy Color, which is a fantastic little wrestling game on the go. So on paper at least, you had a really nice deal for the WWF's first outing on the Game Boy Advance. But Road to WrestleMania has one major issue that keeps it from being a great one, and it's perhaps the one major detriment to the overall package: control. Control is probably the biggest hurdle you'll encounter in Road to WrestleMania. In theory, it's pretty basic stuff. One button strikes, the other button grapples. You have a run button, an extra button for pins and pickups. However, while striking attacks work just fine, they do execute in a timely fashion and they do hit when they're supposed to. But trying to get a grapple move is an extremely frustrating affair. Either you'll drop the grapple altogether or you'll end up being the recipient of pain as a result of your failed attempts. Even on the easy setting and with a working knowledge of how you're supposed to pull off what moves, grappling rarely yields any positive action in your favor. You'll most likely break away or pull off a strike move like a double axe handle or something in order to get some offensive attack through. You'd be lucky to get anything else like a body slam or a suplex off a grapple. Never mind trying to pull off finishes, which is done by pressing both A and B when your biorhythm meter is full, but even that has a hard time executing. If only they went with pressing select to pull off the finisher like in WrestleMania 2000, a game that had similar gameplay but somehow manages to control better than Road to WrestleMania on the Game Boy Advance. Just to further the issues with the game, you can also watch a match between CPU opponents and you'll find that they'll encounter the same grappling breakaway that's just as common as if you were playing the game yourself. Even the most crippling AI in a wrestling game is capable of producing a decent match worth watching at the very least, and I didn't get that here, clearly. Just as an aside though, my friend had warned me ahead of time when he loaned me his copy that he thought this was the worst 2D wrestling game he ever come across. I at first thought he was exaggerating, but after playing the game, I still disagree with him because WrestleMania exists on the NES. At least this game has wrestling moves, if you can pull them off. Now, if you're somehow able to work around the problematic grappling and controls, keyword being if, you'll find quite a few game modes and match types to participate in. Aside from straight up exhibition modes and tag matches, you also have a season mode to compete for championships, a King of the Ring tournament, a Royal Rumble, an Iron Man match, triple threat matches, and even a mode to create your own pay-per-views, which is a neat little concept I thought none of people took an interest in. The season mode is handled quite nicely with cute little animated gifs of nice digital pictures of superstars cutting promos and Mr. McMahon spewing lines. In terms of presentations, the season mode is done well. Visually speaking, Road to WrestleMania looks like a step above those old WWF games that would grace the Super Nintendo, except the characters look a tad smaller than those old LJN published titles, which is okay, especially for a small screen on the Game Boy, because you don't need big chunky characters that filled half the screen. It'd be stupid to do something like that. The character sprites look fine, you can sort of make out who's who, which is a good thing. The different arenas, while generally nice looking, aren't all that different. It's merely a different banner with different colored ropes. The entrance ramp is always going to be the same Raw as War entrance ramp no matter what ring you pick out. Something of a downer, but no harm done. The entrances are kinda crap though, comprising an animated clip show of indeterminate length followed by the posing superstar. Not much really going on there really, and some of these tend to drag out for a bit, which is why you're better off skipping them. Still, Natsume did their best to replicate that aspect of the show, and the clips at least comprise high quality images. So give them points for effort at least. They tried their best with the hardware on hand. If only they included the option to disable these entrances, I would be a somewhat happy camper. Sound-wise, it's nothing stellar. The sound effects are your usual cookie-cutter wrestling sounds with bell rings and referee calls. The generic music that plays during matches and intermissions are nothing special, but they did manage to create some of the superstars' entrance themes to go with the entrance videos. Hell, they even managed to slip in Undertaker's Rollin' track by Limp Bizkit in there that he was using at the time. I wondered how they got away with that. especially since Fred Durst isn't in this game, which I thought was a requirement for using the rolling track. I guess considering it's a crappy MIDI file and a somewhat poor quality one at that, nobody really cared enough. Again, give him points for effort in that respect. On a whole, WWF Road to WrestleMania had all the right pieces in place. Good selection of superstars, a decent amount of game modes and match types to partake in, solid presentation overall, and the superstar entrances tossed in for good measure. It had all of that going for it, but ultimately what kills it is the control. Outside of extremely basic maneuvers, it's a damn chore to get anything out, especially off a grapple, which usually doesn't work as often as one would like. The mechanics of the gameplay seemed like a good idea, a step up from the portable WrestleMania 2000 game. But what that game had that this one doesn't is solid controls that made the game such a joy and pleasure to play. If you have an extreme amount of patience and can put up with the frustration of these crippled controls, you'll probably find something to like with Road to WrestleMania. Otherwise, unless you just have to collect every single wrestling game in existence, this is one Road to WrestleMania you're better off not taking. Just take the next one, it's a bit better, but that's another story for another time.